Siberia is not usually associated with ritual cannibalism. Nevertheless, it occurred there in relatively recent times. It's time for Deviant History. Thanks for subscribing. And now, let us begin another episode. Even though formal Russian rule was established in the late 16th century by Tsar Ivan the Terrible, native nations of West Siberia continued fighting each other. There was a long conflict between the Khanty, Manzi, and Nenets, who competed with each other for better hunting lands and fishing rivers. The Mansi and the Khanty were relative nations and spoke similar Ugric languages close to Hungarian. But the Nenets were connected to the Samoyedic group, who had settled northwest Siberia before the Ugric nomads came there from the southern grasslands. The war between the Khanty and the Nenets lasted the entire 17th century. It was a cruel, bloody epoch. The conflict got harder because of famine caused by the so-called Little Ice Age. Winters became longer and harsher. Game animals migrated to the south, so the native people had to struggle for limited resources. Finally, Khanty warriors cut the Nenets' territory in two along the lower Ob River. Russian missionary Yuri Kershelevsky mentioned the final peace ceremony organized by the Nenets and the Khanty. According to his description, the former enemies followed an ancient pagan tradition to establish peace. It looked actually humiliating to the defeated Nenets. Anyway, the people were not able to fight further, especially because of the problems with food and weather, so the peace was rather inevitable. Kushelevsky told about the peace ceremony this way. The Khanty and Nenets discussed a sacrifice that had to be made for ending the war. Finally, they chose a Nenets male, who was then strangled by his own tribesmen. He was cooked by fire and then eaten, both by the Khanty winners and the Nenets men who took part in the ceremony. The human entrails were put into the large ceremonial wooden dish which was used within the ritual eating. Shamans took the dish and brought it to a sacred place. They cut down a larch tree to form a high stump. The dish was put on the stump and left there as a sacrifice to local spirits. After that, the Nenets and Khanty lived in peace for years, until the Nenets became successful reindeer breeders. Later, they rode the deer and attacked Khanty settlements along the Ob River every so often. The Mansi, the closest relatives of the Khanty nation, also had a conflict with the Nenets, and the cause was the same. While the Khanty attacked the Nenets from the south and southeast, the Mansi raided Nenets' land in the southwest, closer to the Ural Mountains. Russian anthropologist Ismail Gemuev studied the region and local Mansi folklore in the late 1980s. At that time, a Mansi man took Gemuev to a remote sacred place at a small forest river. They traveled 12 hours by boat from the closest Mansi village, called Lombovov, to reach the area. According to Mansi legends, it was the former battlefield where the Mansi and the Nenets fought centuries ago. The tales say that the Mansi won and built a pagan temple there. The temple's remains were found by Gemuev in 1986. Other discovery he made was finding human bones there. Gemuev supposed that it was a sacrifice similar to one mentioned by Kushelevsky in connection with the Khanty-Nenets War. His Mansi friend said that the temple stayed active until the early 20th century. So secret human sacrifices were possible yet in the area about 150 years ago. In any case, one should know that such a kind of sacrifice was provided in exceptional cases, such as armed conflicts, famines, or epidemics. It was not a common practice. In the case of the famine or epidemic, the sacrifice was provided by a shaman. The soul of the sacrificed person was considered to be able to learn the required information from the deities and transfer it to the living through the shaman. The Mansi sacred place discovered by Gemuev is called Sat Vikli. It is located at the bank of the Poapya River, which can be translated from the Mansi language as River of the Spirits. The area has not been studied in detail and can be promising to the new generation of researchers. Anthropologist Gemuev died in 2005 and had no opportunity to finish his research there.